So welcome to Navigating Change, Prime Time for Women series, all about the inevitability of change and how we successfully navigate those changes in our lives. I'm super excited to have you, Joan, on our program. So thank you for being here. And we also want to, before we go ahead and interview Joan, I'd love to ask all of our guests to unmute yourselves and share your name and who you are, because at Prime Time for Women, we believe every woman deserves to be seen and heard. So Janice, how about you go first? Tell us where you're from.
Hi, I'm from Janice Green, and I'm from Austin, Texas. Most of the time.
Okay, well, thanks for being with us, Janice. Margaret?
Hi, I'm Margaret Shippen. I live now in Hartwell, Georgia, which is about 100 miles north of Atlanta.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you for being here. And Laura?
I am Laura Rose. I live in Travelers Rest, South Carolina. And I got my second COVID shot a couple hours ago. And so if I fall over, that's why.
Well, we're glad you're with us, and we're also glad you got that COVID shot. Thanks for being here. Okay, Karen?
I'm Karen Gray, and I'm from Travelers Rest, South Carolina as well. And I am riding in a car, not driving.
Oh, we're glad.
In case you see me moving, think I'm driving.
Well,
nice to be here.
You're
Thank
multitasking.
you.
You're traveling and being here, so that's great.
Yes.
And this name Copiso is, can you introduce yourself? It's
That's you, Catherine.
Oh, Catherine.
Because your name looks like Copios.
Unmute yourself.
You're on mute.
Yeah.
She doesn't know she's on mute.
Okay, Catherine, you're on mute. Can you? Oh, now go.
Okay, I'm Catherine Yost, and I live in Greenville, South Carolina.
Well, thank you for being here, Catherine. We're so glad you're here. So before I get to asking all these questions I've been pondering, thinking about asking Joan, especially as it relates to Change Point, I wanted to say that I see her as a model of somebody who successfully navigates change. In her life, she's done a ton of different interesting things. She taught English as a second language. She served in the Peace Corps. She made videos and released yoga videos that are, I think, still available on Spotify and Amazon and iTunes. And most recently, she wrote a book called Change Point. And I had the privilege of reading that over the last couple of weeks and really considering it. And I cannot wait to talk to you about that, Joan. But first, I thought you might want to share a little bit about your background. How did you get to the point you arrived at when you decided to write Change Point? So just give us the backstory.
Okay, so the backstory could be like the short version of the long version, but I was thinking about how I got into yoga, maybe would be relevant, because I think other people can relate. I was in my 20s. I had a stressful job in a cubicle in a big city in an industry I didn't respect or like, and I wore uncomfortable clothes to work and uncomfortable shoes. So I think a lot of people have been there. And I was a member of the Oakland Athletic Club in Oakland, California. And I walked into the club, and I don't know what made me go to yoga class, but I did. And I'll never forget it, because the teacher's name was Jill Woollums, and she had on a black ballet leotard with white leggings and tights, and she had a very severe bun, super tight, and there was a ballet bar in the room. And I remember standing there with my foot up on this ballet bar. I must have enjoyed it because it kept going. And then I followed her to a yoga studio that was closer to my house, and then I joined the Peace Corps. And before I left for the Peace Corps, I told myself, and I really don't know where this inspiration came from, I told myself I would do 2 sun salutations a day. And I did it for like 2 years. And that, I think, is what changed my life and put me on the path to yoga. I knew when I left the Peace Corps, I wasn't going to go back to the cubicle job with the uncomfortable shoes. So I became a yoga teacher. So that was a long, long time ago. Fast forward to what made me write the book. I think Karen and Catherine were actually at a talk I was giving similar to this with a different group of people. And I said, I think I'm going to write a book about this. I was talking about change point, right? And it had really evolved from all the stress of last year. Just realizing I couldn't let myself be blown around by circumstances. I needed to be anchored. I feel like that was a really long answer.
That's great. It's just a little background into, so one of the things I'm curious is you hadn't done yoga at any point until you were there at the Oakland Athletic Club, right?
You know, my mom, I think, did yoga with PBS when I was a kid. I do remember that being on TV and her being on the floor doing things, but I didn't have any sense that that was yoga. I mean, I grew up in Greer, South Carolina in the 70s.
Right.
I don't think I heard the word yoga. I know I didn't eat an avocado. We didn't have kale. I mean, you couldn't get whole wheat bread in Greer, South Carolina in the early 70s. So I wasn't exposed to a lot of holistic or alternative concepts.
So here you are at this point in your life. You're here to talk to us about how yogic lifestyle and simple habits and mindfulness practices can lead to health and happiness, and I think you would say a sense of purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering if you could tell us, if you don't mind, what was going on in your life when you said, okay, enough is enough. I have had it up to here, and I'm not only going to think about this, but I'm actually going to do it. Was there a point in your life where you felt that you had to switch it up and navigate this change?
I think I've been at that point many times.
Okay.
I feel like for me, committing to health, committing to meditation, committing to spiritual practice, committing to sleeping well, committing to eating green, it happens all the time. I haven't perfected this yet. You know?
Right.
But what I know is I have to keep committing over and over again. But last year, just everything hit me hard, as it did everyone, right? Everything was hitting me harder, and it was more in my face. You know, my shortcomings in these areas were more in my face. That, you know, the news, obviously all the stuff we went through, coronavirus, the shootings, the inequities, the politics, it was all so nasty and stressful that, you know, I'd heard about anxiety before, but I really.
Joan, you just froze.
So I was very humble. Oh, I'm still here. Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Just saying, I don't think I felt anxious until last year. Right. I mean, you know, you do short term, right? But I don't think I really felt anxiety. So it's very humbling.
Right.
And then I can actually remember being on the paddleboard last summer and having one of those aha moments where you're like, oh, I'm actually okay in this moment. I can choose to feel good, and just recommitting again and again to these practices. And that's, for me, what Change Point was about, is saying, let me just really get this straight, make this top priority.
So in deciding to do that, you decide to also share that journey with others and help them. In teaching others, does it hold you accountable, or are you held accountable, or are you holding other people accountable?
I think it's probably a little bit of both ways, but one of my meditation teachers says the cat gets most of the purr. And I feel that that's true. Most of the people I know who are teachers are teaching what they need to practice and to learn.
Right.
So one of my favorite things to do is take kind of big concepts and break them down into steps. And I'm doing that as much for myself as for my students. And then I think just in my nature as a teacher, I end up packaging it up and writing about it and wanting to share it with people. So I think it goes both ways, but there's probably some folks on this call who maybe would comment if they feel held accountable or not.
I that resonated with me because I'm a mom of 5 children, and I think I always knew about good nutrition, and I'm not sure I really practiced it in college or early on, but certainly after I had children, the one thing I didn't want to be was a hypocrite. So if I'm telling them to eat a certain way and the importance of limiting lots of sugar in your diet and, you know, blah, 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 I certainly became more willing to hold myself to what I was asking them to do. And it was always the idea that they strengthened me in my resolve as I tried to teach them some good habits. So.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a two-way street. So teachers appreciate their students possibly more than than the students know.
Yeah. So if you are listening and you'd like to, you know, join in, now would be the time. Take yourself off mute. Let us know. Anybody? Okay, Karen.
Yes. So we're talking about the accountability of the yoga practice, and well, I like what you said about having children and how they held you accountable with, you know, like you say, telling others what to do, but not doing it yourself. So that's helped me a lot in my practice. And right now I just teach some old students of mine during COVID, but I'm not really teaching right now. And, but it's the same, you know, a lot of times I don't feel like doing the yoga or doing something, but I've got to teach those students. And so I've got to continue growing and learning and moving forward so that they, you know, they can learn from me. So I like that I've heard that from both of you, to help me to bring that to the forefront again, because I need to keep being reminded of that, why I do these things. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you for joining in. Anybody else want to join in? Well, Joan, I had another question for you. I know that when I first connected with you, I have this particular interest in posture and balance and functional movement. And I know that that was your area of specialty. I watched some videos that you had made, and that whole alignment thing, as I was reading your book, I was wondering, in your view and as a teacher, does physical alignment, does that go hand in hand with aligning your physical, your spiritual, and your mental well-being?
Definitely. I think there's no separation, right? The body-mind connection is a real thing. It's not woo-woo anymore, right? We know that. And I actually got passionate about posture because of my grandfather, Grandpa Louie. He had a very strong kyphosis, or a forward tilt, and I've started seeing it in my father. And my grandmother was very tipped over as well. So I had that personal interest. And then there's a wonderful TED Talk by Amy Cuddy. If you look TED Talk posture, I think you'd find her. Amy Cuddy's a Harvard scientist, and she talks about what happens physiologically when we hunch over our cell phones, cross our arms, and cross our legs. Our cortisol hormones, you know, our stress hormones go up. The testosterone hormones go down. And women have testosterone as well, of course. And it can lead to that feeling of strength and confidence. On the flip side, they evaluate people in the power pose, which is hands on the hips. Think Wonder Woman, Superman, or any law enforcement officer. They stand this way. With the legs a little bit apart, like an A shape. testosterone levels go up and cortisol levels go down. That made a big impact on me when I understood that. That said, it doesn't mean you can't become enlightened without perfect posture, right?
Right.
But I do think that we do feel a sense of confidence, right? When we can have an open posture.
So
it goes two ways.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when you stand that way, do you gain confidence, or do you have confidence and that enables you to stand that way? And how does aging impact? Why as people age? So I read a study that said the 3 things that are most clearly identified with aging is posture, rounding of shoulder. This is I would say it's the 3 things that people identify as causing you to look older. Posture, your eyebrows, and the color of your teeth. And I thought very interesting, but mainly because I'm super interested in posture. I couldn't wait to ask you about that.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the changes could be bone density changes. Well, there's a couple things. Let's take a couple of things it could be. You hear about disc degeneration.
Right.
And unfortunately, if you get an MRI and you're over 30, you're probably going to see degenerative disc disease. It's really not a disease. It's just gravity. It's
Right.
gravity. And that the disc, over time, they do lose a little bit of height, right? You can stretch that out. I've actually gotten taller in the last 8 or 10 years, but I also hang on a traction wall. So you can stretch those out. You can make space, but there is going to be some shrinking, right, with time. And then second would be bone density. The bones of the spine, the vertebrae, actually can have compression fractures. Sometimes those are very, very painful, and sometimes people don't even know they've had them. The compression fractures, if this is the front of the spine, they often happen on the front. So there's actually, little breaks in the bone, and things start to shrink down the front. So that's what's leading to that. And I've worked with folks with various levels of osteoporosis, and there's always benefit in strengthening the back muscles. But sometimes if the bones are in that shape, there's only so far we can really take it. Mm-hmm. So those are 2 of the factors. And then the other ones are sedentary lifestyle. When we sit,
that's something we have control over, right?
Yeah, when we sit, those hip flexor muscles just they actually, the hip flexor muscles, you think about them on your hips, but they actually run from L5, L4, L3, L2, L1, T12 up into the back of the diaphragm. So it can even be pulling down the chest from the hips. Mm-hmm. So we have to strengthen our backs, really, right? We have to actively work against gravity.
Okay, well, that's great. That's really interesting. And I like that for you, the mind-body connection, the posture can be both something that reminds you to connect with your mind, and your mind can help you tune into your body and activate those muscles.
Yes, even if you do the muscular work, I believe posture is, well, I sometimes say it's a whole body sport that you play all day long. I believe there is a mindfulness piece that we can't ignore, because if you sit in a car, if you sit in a chair, if you work on a computer, if you have a cell phone, we are in flexion. So right. we have to keep catching that with our minds as well. Mm-hmm.
So let's get into Change Point. I'm excited to talk with you about the process. And I didn't know if you wanted to jump in and talk about the 6 steps that you identified. I love that your book is broken down in a very systematic way. It makes it easy to understand. And for our viewers who haven't seen it or who watch this later, it's actually a workbook. It's not just a book. It's very, very helpful. So.
Sure. So the 6 steps, they really, I say in the book, they came to me, and I do feel it just came to me. I was struggling with all the things that I already mentioned, anxiety, all the bad news, all the junk we went through last year. And I was journaling a lot. And I'm a drawer too. I like to draw shapes and pictures. And I just sort of wrote sideways on a piece of paper, surrender. This came first, even though it's the second part of the book, surrender. And then center and simplify. The next word was sattvic, which later got changed to sanctify. Sattvic is Sanskrit for pure or purity. And then spontaneity and service. And this came to me as my map for my way out of the loop. The loop I felt like I was within my head. I was in this loop of negativity, of despair, of what's going to happen, and just worry about the future. And I thought, well, this just came. This is the map.
Right.
The first step was surrender. That was originally going to be the first chapter of the book. And that, to me, is first, because we have to admit that what we're doing isn't working. We have to admit that we need help. Sometimes we have to ask for help from friends or a counselor or someone else. So we could go into every step. I don't know how much more detail you want me to go now.
Yeah, well, I would just say, I have a couple questions about the surrender piece. So in order to really surrender, we have to own our own vulnerability, right? We have to say, we are not, even though we can stand like that and maybe reduce our cortisol level, we're human, and humans are better, stronger, healthier, and happier together. And so when we are isolated, in particular during pandemic, when we're all isolated from each other, that is accentuated, that whole thing. Right. So I was wondering, for you, is vulnerability a weakness, or is acknowledging that a strength?
I think it has to be a strength, because, let me rephrase that. Yes, I think we need to be vulnerable. We need to be honest. And I believe people have told me that when they read the book, they felt better, because they said, oh, I don't feel alone in how I was feeling. Right. So I think that there's that level of needing to be honest and share when we're struggling. On the flip side, I do try to be mindful with my words and not complain. Right? So I think there's a difference, right? We want to be honest, we need to share, but then watch the negative language that can come out too. So I'm always trying to balance those.
So so surrender is like the first, it's key. You can't change if you're not saying, I need to change. You don't even know where to begin. And then the second step was sanctify.
Well, actually, it's funny, in the book, and this is a big conversation with the editor.
Okay.
Originally was first, and we put center first in the book because we felt like we needed to give people something positive to start with, because surrender is heavy work. Like, surrender to me.
Joan, you froze again.
You know what? Let me see if I can change a setting here. Am I back?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, but your picture's up instead of your live picture.
Oh, huh. Really?
Yep. So can you hit your, oh, there you are.
Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. I just went off Wi-Fi. Maybe that will help. So then when talking with the editor, we said, we've got to put something positive first. We put center first. So centering is about what for me, when I was going through last year and feeling all the stuff we've talked about, so I have to anchor into something more eternal than the news, than the temporary situation, than changes in my income, changes in my job status, changes in my relationships. And as a yogi, I knew that was yoga, that was being peaceful, that was being calm, that was being centered and grounded. And that's how I really wanted to feel. So that's for me, that centering piece. And as people have gone through Change Point, they've chosen all different kinds of things to center on. One of the people who went through one of the deep dives chose grace to be in the center. Another chose resolve to be the center. So people can choose what they want, that's what they need now.
Something that speaks to them.
Yeah, but the guidance that I give for centering is to really choose something that's lasting, that's eternal. And if we really look at the human condition, almost everything in our human condition is temporary.
Right.
Even the things that are important to us are temporary. So whether, I don't know if people relate to this, but if you have a sense of a higher power, that's an anchor.
Yeah,
that is eternal.
one of the things I liked about your book is the way it was written. It was universally available. So if you were an atheist but had a sense of the universe, or if you were a devout Muslim, you could find your center there, or if you were a devout Christian, you could put your faith in Christ. And I just loved that it wasn't, it was available to people from all cultures and all traditions. And I did want to make sure I said that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a recovering, can I say I'm a recovering dogmatic? Is that appropriate vocabulary? I mean, I've been dogmatic and strict and rigid. I've been on every diet. You know, I've been on this one and that one. I've been on every fitness plan as a personal trainer and having that fitness background. I've been dogmatic about tidying the house. And so I'm really trying to lighten up, you know.
Right.
But I think one thing about spirituality and religion that I've always, well, not always felt, that I feel now, I feel I can relate to almost anyone, because let's say they're an evangelical Christian. Well, that's probably about pretty far away from my own worldview, but they feel that passion for God, right? So they're just feeling it and expressing it in their way, and I'm expressing mine in mine. So I thank you. I'm glad you got that, because I am a recovering dogmatic.
I love that expression, recovering dogmatic. Yeah, you're going to have to put that on the cover of your book.
Right.
So Joan, just so you know, one of the things that's really important in Prime Time for Women is this idea that we are a community of women from diverse backgrounds. And I always say that I think women in their prime, and people say, how old do you have to be in your prime? And I would say prime is not an age, it's an attitude about age. And the attitude is, you've lived long enough to make some really stupid mistakes, but you've also lived long enough to learn from those mistakes. And so when you say that you're recovering dogmatic, to me, that's like, okay, I've already said this is how it is. And now I've lived it and I've gone, oh, wait, there's enough. I've learned, I've evolved. And it doesn't mean that where you were was bad. It just means at that point in time, that was good for you. But now something else is good for you. So I say, bravo, you're like a poster child for Prime Time for Women.
Great, thank you.
Yes, I love it. So let's real quickly talk about, I don't want to miss out on the spark, because you talked about the spark. So that's one of the 6 areas, right?
Yes, I'd love to talk about spark. And I've actually had some new ahas about spark since writing the book, and even
maybe
since
you
doing
should define that for the folks.
Yeah. So spark is one of the steps, and it originally, I was going to call it spontaneity, because when I was stressed, and when I am stressed, that is not how I feel, right? I don't feel spontaneous. I feel this need to control things and get things under control. But really, when I'm feeling relaxed and peaceful and rested, and I'm doing all my good self-care, then I do feel spontaneous. And so I've had some ahas about it, though, recently, that it's really, for me, spark activities are the ones that make me feel present. So back to that mindfulness piece. And I was thinking about it just this weekend, that, you know, for me, things that make me feel sparky, right? Like cardio exercise definitely makes me feel alive, specifically dancing. outside. And there's something I didn't put in the book that I'll share with you. I have this little routine called the boogie strut, which is to basically dance around the neighborhood with my headphones on outside. And so I'm sure the neighbors are thinking I'm crazy, but it makes me happy.
Right.
It's like outside, it's dancing, it's music, it's cardio. So cardio makes me feel sparky. My paddleboard makes me feel sparky. Doing back bends makes me feel sparky, but those things, they're physiologically giving us endorphins. But they also are the times I feel present, like watching the birds out here, I feel present. So I think for everyone to think about what makes you feel sparky, what makes you feel spontaneous, what makes you feel joyful. When do you feel alive? When do you feel present? I think those are of course different for everyone. So that's kind of my new little understanding of it, is that when I'm watching a Mr. Bean video, and laughing so hard it hurts. I say that Margaret likes Mr. Bean too. That makes me feel present.
Right.
So it's my spark. And so the challenge is to do that stuff, right? When we feel too busy.
So I would like to ask, or at least invite our guests here today to say what gives them a spark, what brings them that sense of presence that you're talking about. Anybody want to join in?
I will.
Go ahead. Thanks, Margaret.
Years ago, I tried meditation, and I tried really hard, like every day, and it just wasn't working. And I said something to my really good friend Jenny, and she looked at me like I was bananas. And she said, Margaret, kickboxing is your meditation. And I was like, oh, she is so right. That's when I feel present and connected and joyful, all those things you said, Joan. And it was such an aha moment that meditation doesn't have to be sitting cross-legged on the floor.
Yeah, it's anything that brings that mind and body connection to you. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's a good lesson for all of us to know that we're all different. And it's important, as Jen would say, to find the thing that connects with you. Anybody else want to jump in and share?
May I share? Yes,
Yeah,
I
sure.
just like to say we're on our way back from visiting our grandchildren, and they really make me feel present. Our granddaughter turned 5 yesterday. So, just being around, watching that joy and, well, it's kind of a two-sided thing. Watching the joy and all that brings me such joy and happiness, but also watching her change as she gets into that me self, because that still helps me. I see kids get into that me self, like, oh yeah, I know that, and here I am, 64 years old, and I can still go into that, me self. But so, I feel very present and just grateful for yoga that y'all were talking about, being young or old or whatever you are. And I heard the saying that you're as young as your spine is flexible. So, because I can do all kinds of stuff. I was playing on the monkey bars with her and going down the slides. Now, I was a little sore the next day, but that's the gift that I have today, is being able to be present for the kids. So thank you.
That's neat.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you. Anybody else want to jump in and share what gives you spark? Oh, Janice, you got to unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, Janice.
Oh, we heard her earlier.
So if you usually it's oh, I'm going to try to unmute you. Hold on. Let me see if I can unmute you.
Here we go.
Okay, there you go.
Magic. I think the most, one of the ideas about spark that came to my mind is gardening. Whether it is something complex or really focused, like bonsai, or trying to learn about orchids, or whether it's trying to make a garden grow at my mountain cabin in Colorado, where it's crazy to try to grow things at the altitude I'm at. But it's kind of that relating back to what's eternal, and that's always been a major spark for me, is just somehow engaging in plant life, whether it's, you know, appreciating the trees, or whether it's literally just digging in the dirt.
Is it that part that you're nurturing life? Is that?
I'm sure, because when the seeds sprout or a plant takes off, I mean, I feel like, oh my God, look what I did. I'm taking all the credit, you see.
Yes, that's great. Thank you for sharing.
I love to piggyback on what Janice said, because there's so many links between psychology and physiology. And one of them with gardening and being outside in nature, of course, we have sunlight, fresh air, all of that stuff. But when people started talking about earthing and grounding, there was this big in the news several years ago, walk barefoot outside every day because you get the minerals, we absorb through our skin, right? So when you're in the dirt with your hands, I think that there's some chemical changes happening in your body besides the emotional ones. So, we are chemical systems.
We just had our grandchildren here 2 weekends ago, and we took them to a farm, and my son was saying, Charlie's hands are dirty. We got to wash those hands. And my husband said, no, that's good for his immune system. Don't worry. Don't freak out about that.
Right.
Yeah. So, because we have to live in this world, and then our body responds to it.
Yeah.
I think for me, I really find my spark in relating to other people and hearing their stories and seeing how they enrich my life. One of the things I did since COVID was I started a blog called A Year of Hikes, 52 Weeks, 52 Women, Same Trail. And I hike the same section. I've done it 11 times with 11 different women, and I write a blog about it. And it occurred to me, I said to myself, do we see the world differently depending on who we're with? And how does that change my experience of that world? And over the course of time, will the trail look different because the seasons are different, or will it be because I'm with different people? What will I learn about myself as I see myself through other people's eyes? So it was this whole little experiment, and it has been this incredible blessing. I've hiked with a devout Muslim woman, a fundamental Christian, and every time I hike, I not only learn something about them, my life is enriched, and I see myself a little differently in their eyes. So I think it's a little bit about what you said, being outside, because it takes, depending on who I'm hiking with, it takes 4 hours or 2 hours. I hiked with a young woman who was 39. We killed that trail. I was exhausted the next day. And then I hiked, another day with a woman who was 70. And we were much slower. But to me, it is that connection with the earth and with another person. And that feels like a little bit more that eternal thing that you're talking about.
Yeah. And there's really not any line between the steps in Change Point, right? Like that could also be sanctifying your life because it's bringing health and nature into your life. It could be simplifying your life because you're going outside. It could be surrendering because you're going to take the day off email. They're all connected. So those are all beautiful.
I did want you to talk about simplify, because that's something that, especially in our go-go culture and our consumerism culture, it's difficult for some people. So what are your tips and tricks for simplifying?
Well, I wrote in the book, this is my challenge. This is the one I enjoy the most, and it's the hardest for me. not so much on possessions. I live in a very simple home, and I don't have a lot of stuff, although still always have a load for Goodwill in the trunk. For me, it's about my schedule, right? It gets tricky. So, in the book, I talk about, for me, when I notice I need to simplify, I usually start with the low-hanging fruit. So I'll declutter, go through the closet, go through the house.
Marie Kondo routine.
Do the Marie Kondo. So everyone knows, I think, Marie Kondo. She's uber famous. Thank goodness. She's wonderful. So love that. And then I look at my schedule, right? And that is for me where it gets hairy, right? I say yes to so many things. And sometimes my husband's like, really? You signed up for that? Like, you feel so busy. Like, so that's, I do try. I just took myself out of a course I had signed up for. I just, withdrew from the course. Is not now. So I'm always needing to refine that area. I do think I shared in the book, I have a busyness addiction. I could have called the book like Simplifying Your Life for Overachievers, I think. My husband can come home and it doesn't matter what the house looks like or if the laundry is done. He can just lie on the couch and sleep. But I am one of those people, I have to tidy everything up. I feel like I have to be like nesting a little bit and get things organized. So not everyone has this need to simplify. But then we look at simplifying, for example, like your electronic clutter, right? Like, so just this morning on the weekends, usually I try to like delete emails, unsubscribe, simplify that down. And that's a whole new area of clutter we didn't have before. But then deeper, for me, it's like, what is going on in my head? What needs to be cleaned out? And I've recently, as I shared, had some new training in mindfulness. And I had the realization that I live a lot of my life in the future. I'm a very good manifester. I'm very good at bringing things into fruition because I think about the future so much, but that needs to be simplified, right? I can simplify those future thoughts more into planning periods and be present. So everyone needs to simplify in their own way, but for me, it's physical environment, schedule, and then what's in my head, ultimately.
I wanted to say, piggyback on something Karen said in terms of simplifying. For a couple of years ago, I was a regular babysitter for my granddaughter when her mom went back to work. And on that day, every week, I would drive from my home to Tacoma Park, which is a pretty long drive and stressful, depending on the traffic. And down by DC, it's always stressful. But I would get there and I would be so totally absorbed in her little world. And I would have my cell phone on silent because I wasn't working that day. My husband knew where I was. I didn't feel like I had to respond. And for 8 hours, I was focused, and I would come home and I would have a different physical sense in my body. And my husband said, didn't the traffic drive you crazy on the way home? I said, no, I was great, and it was because of that attention to the presence, which I think, like you, I'm a little bit of a multitasker, which is an asset many, many times, but not always.
I love that. I think children are 100%. They are mindful, present beings, and that's a gift of being around them. That's beautiful.
When I speak, I frequently encourage people in the audience to not be afraid to play. Go back and experience some of those things you did as a kid. Put on a costume, play jump rope, do kickboxing. I don't know what it could be anything that you did as a child, because when you revisit your past, you have the potential of bringing not only the memories, but actually changing your body chemistry based on those memories. So so that's important to know. So Joan, it's surrender, simplify, sanctify, spark, and I wanted to talk about serve.
Let's talk about serve. What do you have a question about it?
No, I wanted to hear what you had to say, because to me, as I read the book, I thought all those things point to that, but I didn't know if that's how you wanted it to play.
Yeah, I mean, that's in my mind. so I have a lot of, I'm a visual person, so I have a lot of drawings and things from over the years. And at one point with my business, I was working with a 5-pointed star. 5 is my favorite number. It's easy because you can always, I remember from Sesame Street, you can always have them on one hand. And I had sort of 5 keys for overall wellness, right? And so they were eat well, move well, sleep well. There's actually a great book called Eat, Move, Sleep by Tom Rath, I think. I might have the author's name wrong, but it's a great book. Eat, Move, Sleep. And then we have personal growth. That's an essential piece of just overall wellness because we're always changing, right? We have to adjust and change and grow and learn. And then the 5th is serve. I'm lucky because I know I have this inner sense of what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't always stay exactly on track with it, but I do know what it is. And I think that's a real blessing. It simplifies life. So I think deep down, we usually have some sense if we can open ourselves up to receive that knowledge. And in the book, I talked about that can shift, of course, as we age, right? That's the changing process when people retire, or maybe they were full-time parents and then the kids grow up. There's that empty nest feeling of what do I do now? So we have to really clear away the distractions so we can listen inside and know what that purpose is.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, thank you. I just thought that was a beautiful way to round out the parts of the program.
Yeah.
And I have this feeling that if people know what their purpose is and they feel empowered to live it, they're going to have more joy. And they will bring more, not only will they have more joy, they will give more joy to those around them. So I really liked that part of the book. Can I go back and tell you something else I really liked about the book? I liked when you were talking about the Chinese character for crisis and how, well, I'm going to get you to explain what that means to from different perspectives.
Sure. Well, John F. Kennedy is the one who made this a bit, well known in the West, I would say in the United States, because he campaigned on the belief or the statement that the Chinese character for crisis, the Chinese symbol for crisis has 2 characters. And the first one we've heard is danger, and the second one is supposedly opportunity. And that must have been in my mind when I was thinking about this circle or the change point process. And so I looked it up, and then I found this other definition of the second character as precarious change point. So I was picturing someone on the top of a skinny boulder or something, and you could go one direction or the other. And that's what last year felt like. We can let it beat us, right? We can let it beat us down, and definitely no judgment, because I had my own low moments last year, and we're still having some, right? We're still struggling a little bit to get through what we're going through. But we can also look at it and say, this is an opportunity to really change, to really try to make things stick the way we want to.
Okay, that's perfect. And tell us about the vitamins that most doctors don't know about.
Yes, so some of the folks on the call have heard this stuff from me before. Where did I come? Oh, vitamin J has a story that's actually not in the book, and I don't know if anyone in my current life knows it. But when I lived in California, I was in a group of friends, and they nicknamed me Vitamin J, which was kind of fun. So that was the beginning of Vitamin J. And then later, one year for Halloween, I dressed up as Vitamin J. So I wore like a superhero outfit, and I had bananas in my holsters and oranges in my bra and an orange cape that, had Vitamin J on the back. So I was, promoting healthy eating at that time. And then later, when I learned about the dose, the daily dose, which is dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, it kind of just came together with the daily dose of vitamin J. So the J is for joy, not juice. You were
Yeah,
thinking, but so the J is for joy, and we talked about spark. And as an overachiever, as someone who is probably a bit too driven and too list oriented, it's important for me to remember to have fun every day, because I can just get into achieving mode. So the vitamin J is that reminder, and it's actually on my to-do list. Did I do anything today for fun that made me feel good? And then vitamin P I added later for peace, because some days if your energy is really low, you might not really get very joyful, but maybe you can find a peaceful place instead.
That's great.
So that's fun. It's fun. I like talking about
Take
vitamin
your
J and P.
multivitamin and make sure you get some joy and peace in your life every day. That's
So I literally write it on my to-do list, like on my chart for the week, make sure I get that in.
That's great. Now, I was going to ask you to talk about dose, and you mentioned it real quickly there, but I don't know that everybody is aware of the endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. And so I thought, from my perspective, some of my research, and it's one of the things that actually drives some of our mission, is when people take the time to really attend to a relationship, and that means to listen to others and also to share. The body elicits more dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. And oxytocin is called the cuddle hormone, dopamine is reward hormone, and serotonin cancels out all the cortisol. And so one of the things that I find, as I was reading your book, that you call on this as a daily dose, and I've never really thought of it that way. I just thought, oh, this is good for you. And so as I was reading it, I was wondering, do you think about it each day? Is that part of your way of being in the world?
I don't necessarily think about the dose every day. I really think about the vitamin J more.
Which is, it's going to get you to the dose.
Which is going to get a lot of them. And I'm grateful, because a lot of the things that I like doing bring those hormones into play and neurotransmitters into play. But yeah, the dopamine one, you did a great job of explaining those. And dopamine, I have learned a little bit more about since I wrote the book, and I've shared with some of the folks on the call today. But dopamine, when we're in a time of stress, we're not getting that reward as much, right? Because a lot of it comes from being out, as you said, connecting to others, those kinds of things, serving. And so for some people, they couldn't feel like they were really doing anything for others. And I've recently learned from a coach about looking for like micro dopamine, like mini doses of dopamine. And here would be an example. It's Sunday today, so I didn't have to jump out of bed. And I usually don't have to jump out of bed because I wake up really early, but I lingered in my bed this morning and just stretched a little bit and just looked around and saw the light around the top of the curtains. And I just appreciated that feeling like, oh, I'm really comfortable. And that was dopamine. My coach actually said one of the things she does, she has this special dental routine. She has a special mix she has of essential oils, and it's really pleasurable for her to clean her teeth with this mix. And these are these little mini dopamines we can get even when we can't get the big ones, like achieving something big in the world, or so that's been helpful to focus on micro doses during the pandemic.
Yeah, Dr. Laurie Santos did the Happiness Project. I don't know if you, I think that's out of Harvard. No, Yale, right? Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's one of the things she talks about is how dopamine is the reward center. And she said to look for little gratitudes is what she called it.
Yeah.
So when you said that, I thought a little dose, yeah, a little gratitude goes a long way. Yeah, that's good. So I was wondering if, as you're doing your process here and talking about change point, you also talk about actions and sister actions. I was wondering if you could talk about that.
Yeah, I actually, you know, as I said, I think I wrote this book so I could learn from it. Because there's so many things I need to keep practicing. But, you know, so the surrender, the sister action is forgiveness. And I did learn about forgiveness last year as well, just forgiving everything. Forgiving everything, because it's just weighs us down, right? If we don't, even forgiving ourselves for not being perfect, forgiving ourselves for not being further along than we are, and then simplify. That's the, you know, that decluttering phase. We have to trust. When I let go of something from my schedule, it's immediately almost filled up. I think nature abhors a vacuum, right? So I need to trust, though, that if I clear the decks, it's okay, right? That silence is okay. That empty space is okay. And then sanctify. That's where we clean our lives. That's where we clean our diet, clean our bodies, clean our minds. The sister action is self-love. And the exercise on self-love is called company's coming. And if I ask you, what do you do when company comes? You know, you clean the house, you put out the best china, you buy the best food you can afford, you make a beautiful meal. And how often am I eating cold leftovers from a Tupperware standing over the kitchen sink? You know, how can we treat ourselves like company? Right. So that is that for me, that practice of self-love. So I want to give myself those same comforts that I would give a visitor. And then we didn't get to talk about appreciate, but we did a little bit, the mini gratitudes. So Spark, the sister action is appreciate, and the tool there is called Snap. So that would be something good for us to do together. And Snap stands for stop, notice, and appreciate. And we can do that at any moment. That's really what I did this morning. I didn't snap in my bed. I could have. But I stopped, I noticed, I appreciated. And right now I'm stopping, I'm noticing, thankful you're here. I'm appreciating this opportunity to fulfill my purpose in sharing. And then serve the sister action is balance, right? Because I think we've probably all been there, or we know people who give to others so much that they're depleted. Right. And I have a good friend who's a giver. I mean, such a wonderful sweetheart, you know, huge heart, and she's a giver, and she wore herself out. You know, she wasn't giving to herself. So we have to balance that giving with receiving, balance that giving with self-care, balance our service in the world with silence and quiet at home at the level that everyone needs for their individual constitution.
Yeah, and I love that you say that, because there's a recognition that everybody's needs for that are different, right? We're not all the same, and that diversity is one of the gifts that we need to snap about, you know?
Yes, yes.
And not say,
thank God, yeah.
This is how I do it, so this is how you should do it. Yeah. So, you know, one of the things you were talking about, the sister action of forgiveness. As you were talking, I was reminded of when my dad, not until after I was married did he get sober, and he was sober for 33 years. We had just an incredible new relationship, and there's 9 children, and my dad sought forgiveness, but more than that, he made amends in each of our lives, and it was so powerful. But the thing that I know is that his amends went beyond his family and his children, because when he died, at his funeral, I swear there was half of the 1975 graduating class from Severn Park High School, that was the year I graduated, was there. And they said, oh, your dad was my sponsor. Your dad was my sponsor. Your dad was my sponsor. And
Wow.
I thought to myself, my dad's forgiveness, he forgave himself. And then he went out and shared that with everybody. So I had no idea that these people knew my dad. I didn't even live in the area anymore. And these people come up, hey, why are you here?
Wow.
And so it's just when you were talking about that, I had this really clear vision of what that forgiveness, what's possible with forgiveness.
That's beautiful. What a beautiful thing to realize all that about your dad.
Yeah, it was really great. So,
Yeah.
so Joan, I was going to see if there's anything else you wanted to talk to us about. If you are open to taking questions or comments from our guests.
I'm definitely open to taking questions and comments, and to wrap things up, I mean, what I really want people to know and feel for themselves is their inner presence. So maybe we could just pause for a minute and just take a breath or two. Feel free to close your eyes. And just, looking at Zoom calls, Zoom is a blessing, but let those eyes turn inward. Yogananda, my guru's guru, said, turn the searchlights of the soul, turn the searchlights of the senses inward to the soul. All right, so those eyes are like searchlights. Going to turn them into your heart. Feel your breath. And really feel and know that deep, deep within, you are an unlimited unit of the presence of God. And that is what is inside you, always eternal. And it's expressing in many beautiful ways. We're all expressing that individually with our own personalities, our strengths, our spark, our service, our style. But ultimately, the other takeaway here is that because we are each a unit of the presence of God, we're really connected. We are the same inside. And that's really what yoga teaches at the most essential level of yoga. To unite our attention and awareness with that essence. So that is really the message that I want to give. And it took a lot more words in the book, but
A great distillation of your book.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that and leading us through that little meditation. At this time, I'd like to invite those who are tuning in to feel free to unmute yourself, ask your questions, respond to comments, share your journey. We are stronger, healthier, and happier when we connect and share who we are as we reach out to others.
And Laura, I'm so glad you're still vertical. No bad side effects. She's up. Good. Good.
I'm having a hard time. I'm awake.
You're ready for your nap after the shot.
Yes.
Well, we're so glad you joined us, Laura. Well, I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today on Navigating Change. Obviously, Joan is a model of successfully navigating change. She not only demonstrates it, she provides a outline, a guidepost through her book, Change Point. And I'm just so grateful that she was able to join us here today. And we will look forward to seeing you on next week's Prime Time for Women's Navigating Change next Sunday at 3 p.m. So I'm so glad you're here. Check out our other posts on our website, Prime Time for Women, and we're so grateful that you're a part of our community. Have a wonderful Sunday.